summarize some of the points that we've learned today with seed digging. Remember, people are the garden, they are not the weeds. And so when we begin to see a child or a person through the eyes of love and acceptance, and we see the garden and not the weeds, an amazing thing happens is that that child will begin to see themselves through the eyes of love and acceptance, and will climb Maslow's hierarchy of needs and reach level 4 of a positive self-esteem. That's when they will learn, grow, and thrive at their greatest potential. One of the simplest ways that you can begin to implement seed digging into your school, your classroom, your agency, or even your home is to focus on the 7 and 8 needs. That is the nuts and bolts, that is the basics and the core of how seed digging works. We want to keep it simple. We want to go back to the basics. So we want to always think of ways to get the innate needs into a child's heart. If they're low in oxygen, we would give them oxygen. If they're low in electrolytes, we would give them electrolytes. If they are malnourished and they need food, we'd give them food. You want to begin by noticing which innate needs the child is lacking. And you can begin by downloading the self-esteem screener that is found on our website under seeddigging.com. And the self-esteem screener will have 2 different versions. One is 4 through 11, and one is 12 plus, 12 and older. You can actually download and do a written copy, or you can actually use the online version and create a code for each child in your class or your own children. And it will remember the code, and you can actually do long-term results, even give the student the screener 3 or 4 times in the school year or your classroom, and it will track the data and show you if they are improving in self-esteem, which we know the research has already been done. If a child reaches level 4 of a positive self-esteem, not only are they going to do better emotionally and behaviorally, but they're going to do better academically as well. So the screener has 2 purposes. One is for long-term, not only data, but to give you a picture that the seeds you're sowing in that child's heart, in the group, in your classroom of students' hearts, that you're making progress. Because sometimes we don't always get to see the fruit of our labor immediately. This is a great concrete way to see that grow. The second purpose of the screener is that really by having students fill it out, you'll know very quickly which innate needs they are low in just from a quick glance at the screener. When you recognize which one they are low in, you want to be creative and think of ways that you can sow those innate needs into their heart. So one really neat story is a story about a school counselor who did the seed digging counselor program several years ago, and she shared a story with me about a young man at her school who had really had a hard home life, a really tough home life, and he didn't come to school often, and he also was kind of struggling with some substance abuse. And the counselor and a couple of teachers decided to meet that student every morning when he did come to school and just shower him with so much love. And they would say things like, "We are so glad you're here, we need you here, we've missed you, you belong here." And in time, that young man actually started coming to school more. Because the most amazing thing, one of the most amazing things to me about humanity is that we long for connection, and we long to be noticed and be loved and valued. You know, I think about a tree and a flower that will actually grow around the shadows to get to the sun. You may have seen trees before that are crooked on the side of a cliff trying to get to the sun, because nature understands this concept of growing towards something bigger. I think human beings understand that subconsciously. We need one another, and we grow to people who help us feel good and create that warm sensation. And when I believe all of that's happening is that the 7 and 8 needs are being sown into that child's heart. When that counselor and those teachers were meeting that young man at those doors, they were saying to him, "You matter, I care about you, we love you." And they were speaking to his heart and putting an oxygen mask on and electrolytes and maybe even giving him some soul food to help him understand that he mattered and that he had a purpose. And that child responded. We respond towards love. We grow towards love and acceptance. So I love sharing that story because I think that's such a great analogy of how we can help our students overcome and heal and not just stay in survival mode. So you want to think of creative ways. If you share the assessment and you have a student that has 1 or 2 innate needs or all 7, be creative and think about verbal affirmations and physical activities you can do to help that child. You can download the worksheets with some examples of verbal affirmations. Simply telling that child that they belong in your classroom is meeting that innate need. When I do counseling sessions in my office and I have parents who are working with me with their child, I will give them homework. And the homework is that I have identified 1 or 2 innate needs are low and that I need them to help me. So when the child is at home, they may go into their bedroom at night, lay with them on the bed and just say, you belong in this family. You belong in this home. We love you so much. Or when they pick them up from school in the car, just remind them, you belong in this car with me. Those little verbal affirmations are powerful, and it's just putting a little bit more, sowing a little bit more love and light into their garden, which will create all of the elements to help it grow. So that's very, very important. Think about creative activities. We have some examples on the worksheets that you can download. One of my favorites that I've seen in many, numerous school districts across the state is when the child stands up, says the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning, and then afterwards over the loudspeaker, all students put their hand over their heart and they go through the seed digging mantra. And you can also download that worksheet as well. And I give it to parents and tell them to put it in the child's bedroom, in the bathroom. I tell children to put it by their bed at night and read it over and over and over until they believe it. And the mantra goes like this: I am loved, I am valuable, I am needed, I am accepted, I belong, I'm safe and secure. And no matter how bad things seem, somehow, some way, it can and it will be okay. I've seen so many different variations for school teachers. I had one first grade teacher who taught her students a little hand activity, and they would do that with one another, and they would look at their partner and tell them, you are loved, you are valuable, you are needed. And really, from a scientific perspective, not even mentioning the emotional oxygen piece, from a scientific perspective, we're training these children to create neural pathways in their brain for resilience, just like the Olympians do, to know who they are and to remind themselves of that. And that's one of the beautiful things about seed digging, is that throughout the entire process, our goal is to equip that child, even those adults who we work with these tools so they know how to reset the negative thoughts in their brain and create new neural pathways for resilience. Because when they begin to believe how loved and valued and needed and accepted they are, we know that that will create good emotions and feelings, which will create good behaviors, positive behaviors. And my ultimate goal is that we'll have a lot more kindness and love in our world. So let's go back to the model. Let's go back to, once you have identified which innate need the child is low in, you want to use the verbal affirmation worksheet and creative strategies, and then take that information and place it on the soul food worksheet. And once you have the soul food worksheet, you can do so much with this. You can have a list of your students individually or in a group and identify which areas they're low in. Write 1 or 2 quick goals for that student. These are verbal affirmations I'm going to work on for these 5 students. I'm going to work on belonging for these 10 students. And then group activities. What are some group activities I can incorporate into the classroom to meet that social emotional component for my students?